Let's speak now to Sudaraka Ariyarathna. He is an economist and research consultant at the Advocata Institute, also in Colombo. In January last year, the UN World Food Programme estimated that 44% of families in the tea estate areas were food insecure. That is twice the figure for urban districts. Will this wage increase go some way to redressing that balance?
That's an interesting question because in theory, although any wage increase might allow for the food insecurity in the estates to ease up a little bit, I'm not too sure that this wage increase is necessarily practical. So I don't think there's a point in having a conversation where, if it's not a pragmatic thing, I don't believe that the wage increase can actually happen in practice, because if you look at the economics of it, the numbers just doesn't support it. I mean, you can't ask the estates to pay a salary that they are practically not able to pay based on profit margins. So in that context, I'm not too sure.
You're saying that these tea companies can't afford to pay that increased wage?
Yes, when we talk about minimum wage, the minimum wage until the recent increase was 1,000 rupees a day. But what we don't mention is that there's also a lot of other benefits that the tea workers receive. So by law, the estates are required to provide them with housing, healthcare, education, childcare, and sometimes dry rations. But I think, like I said earlier, the economics of the way that they are doing it just doesn't make sense.
Isn't it a very labour-intensive job picking tea?
Yes, it is a very labor-intensive job. But what we have seen in Sri Lanka is that the productivity of the workers is quite low compared to the rest of the world. If you look at Sri Lanka's biggest competitors in the tea industry, India and Kenya, who also produce black tea like Sri Lanka does, the productivity per day of a worker is around 40 to 60 kilograms. And this is not to say that the workers are lazy or that they don't do their job. It's just that there aren't enough incentives built into the wage system to encourage them to plug more. So the way that the law stands now, I think, like Dimuthu mentioned, is that you plug 18 kilograms of tea a day and then you receive your minimum wage. That's it. But what we have been pushing for is a system that encourages them to plug more and based on their productivity, pays them more, right? If you look at the current situation, it's a lose-lose wage model, if you can put it that way, because the estates obviously suffer from the low productivity that has translated to Sri Lanka having the biggest cost of production for black tea in the world, if you look at all of the tea producing countries. And on the other hand, what a lot of people don't talk about with respect to this minimum wage model is that it actually imposes an upper ceiling on what the workers can earn. Even with the 1,700 minimum wage, if you work out the math, if there are 22 days of work a month, then it adds up to 37,400 rupees a month that they're able to earn. And this necessarily doesn't go a long way in Sri Lanka right now.
In the tea production cycle, is the picking of the tea the biggest cost?
It is the biggest cost. It is said to be around 60 to 70% of the cost of production at a tea estate based on how automated the plucking is, but it is the biggest cost.
I understand that if companies don't comply with this wage increase, then they could face the government taking over their business. But by the sounds of it, from what you're saying, you don't think that this will come in?
There's going to be a lot of pushback from the industry, and it remains to be seen what comes out of this, some kind of change to the model. But I don't think that it's likely that 1,700 is going to end up materializing.